I'd like to talk a little bit about MapleSim 2016 today, and specifically some of the changes that are made in the user interface that we think make it much easier to model within the software. So just to back up slightly for those of you who are less familiar with MapleSim, MapleSim is a system-level, multi-domain modeling tool, and it sits on top of MapleSoft's powerful Maple math engine. Now you can do all kinds of analysis. I've listed some of the pieces here. A big piece is the fact that you can go into Maple, take advantage of your MapleSim models, do all the analysis that you can do with Maple there. You can export MapleSim models to highly efficient C code. We've got ways of accessing it over the web, all kinds of things like that. But really what I want to focus on today is that in order to do all of those things, you need to be able to build the model in MapleSim first. Now for those of you who have been watching our last set of releases, you'll recall that in 2015 we released the CAD Tool Box. And one of the goals there was making modeling easier by being able to take advantage of work that you had already done. So you could bring things in that you have already built in your company and your other CAD tools and bring it into MapleSim and make a system level model using those components and not having to sort of redevelop them inside of our tool. We feel like in 2016 the big focus has been, now that you've got your models and your pieces inside of MapleSim, how can we make it easier for you to construct the model? And sort of a high level guiding principle here is we've worked hard. You can see some changes to the interface there to first of all make the key things that you use all the time one click away, so you can get to those tools quickly inside of MapleSim. And the second piece is you spend a lot of time in the sort of modeling diagram, this window where you move your blocks around and attach them and set things up. And we wanted to give as much real estate to that as possible. And so we've devised some ways of, when you need it, you can expand that so you can see as much of the model at once as possible, but still have access to those other pieces you need within one click. I'm going to go through some text here very quickly to highlight some of the changes, and then I'm going to drop into the product and actually show you some of these changes. So making modeling easier. The first focus has been on making the interface more streamlined. The pieces here are the right-click access, so a lot of things that were buried before between right-clicks or complicated menus we've now put on and made quickly available through icons and buttons in the interface. We've also taken the idea of using hover panels. These are panels that you can quickly call in. They'll come over top, give you access to things like the library, but then you can back them away when you need to take and see the entire modeling area. Finally, we've also added some key things like the Smart Search. And this is a search toolbar that appears, if you may have seen it if you've been paying attention to what's going on in Maple. It's a toolbar that allows you to quickly search through all of MapleSim's components. You can search through all the examples that ship with the product. It will also actually allow you to search our online model gallery for any matches that link to what you're searching for. So the idea being that to get started faster in the modeling process, we want to make it easier for you to find things that are already done. We've added apps in MapleSim 2016. What are apps? Essentially, these are easy ways to take advantage of the powerful Maple engine inside of MapleSim without needing to necessarily work with all of the interfaces inside of Maple. So it's a fast way to get access to the Maple engine. These are essentially worksheets that have interactive components on them, and you can use them right from inside the MapleSim environment. We've added some additional libraries at the request of different customers, contact primitives, as well as a pneumatics library with that's provided by our partners at Modelon. And then wouldn't be a MapleSim release if we didn't continue to improve the exported code. The scaling option, an algorithm for making your simulations more robust, particularly when you've got different states in your model with largely different scales. Those options now flow through to both FMI and our Simulink exports. And the Simulink export in particular, we've had customers who are trying to export to Simulink and then put the Simulink code on targets that only support single precision. And you now have that option when you export from MapleSim in 2016. So that's the enough words, I suppose. Let's go look at the product itself, and you can take a look. So the first thing I think you'll see, or I hope you'll see, is that the interface is a lot cleaner. We flattened a lot of the icons and just cleaned it up, and you can see even in this sort of resolution, there's a lot more space here for the modeling environment. The top menu bar is changed and rearranged a bit. Some of the key things that are here now is we've taken the most commonly used simulation settings, things like the duration, being able to turn the diagnostics on and off, and move those to the top. They're still available if you go over to the simulation settings, but you don't have to necessarily go here. You have them available access to them right away. There's also the search bar here, and this is the piece that I was telling you about. If I type in robot, you can see it's going to look for library components through the shipped examples, anything that we have in our model gallery. It also looks through the help results, and you can grab those and use them as well. I'm going to grab the spherical robot here. Just by clicking on it, it loads the model. And this is built with some of the new contact primitives that are in the MapleSim library as of 2016. Now I should point out that the contact library is not an add-on. It's just part of what ships with MapleSim. There's no additional cost for it. However, you might be asking at this point, but where is the library? I can't see it. In MapleSim 2015, that was always sort of sitting here on the left. That could be made to do that again, either by hitting Control Space or just clicking on the bar, and you can see that immediately this, we call them hover panel, pops up, and it goes over top the diagram, so it doesn't shift it over. If you prefer, you can always lock these panels and see things the way that they were in the 2015 time frame. So that contact library I was talking about, that's tucked away inside of the multibody. Here's your contacts. We've got the cone, cylinder, and disc, as well as rectangular, sphere, and torus elements, as well as then all the contacts that you can have between them. We've also added a pneumatics library, as I mentioned. There's over 100 components here for modeling things like pneumatic cylinders. If you've got air tools that you're trying to model, this is a library that allows you to get started and get moving a lot faster than having to necessarily build all of these components directly from scratch. As before, you've got your local components, your definitions. Now those are one click away on the left side here. The model tree is available. You've got a full panel there to search, and as before, you can still search for things like a particular component type, any parameters, where they're used in your model, where the probes are in your model. The attachment section is the same, only now you can access it again directly with one click. And finally, there's a new section. Actually, I shouldn't say entirely new. It's a mix of old and new. Templates are now available with one click. You can see if you want to start a new template. As you may or may not be aware, templates are essentially Maple worksheets that sort of give you a starting point for different types of analysis that you might want to perform. You can modify them and then save them with your MapleSim model. There's also the ability to work with apps, and this is the new piece that I was telling you about in MapleSim. We've also added some new apps. We've overhauled a few of them, like optimization. We've added a parameter sweep app, and these are things that allow you to sort of get started with MapleSim very quickly. So let me just give you an example of an app. I'm gonna type in here vehicle. So I'll grab a longitudinal vehicle example. This is a pretty simple example. It uses, as its name suggests, a longitudinal vehicle. It's got a set point. It's applying a torque. There's some slip in the tires, and it's trying to sort of achieve a forward velocity. I'm gonna grab a feedback block here, drag it in. This is essentially what I'm going to compare the set point value to the forward velocity. This is what the little PID controller there is using. I'm going to call that the error. And so now I've got an actual probe that outputs the error between what the actual forward velocity of the vehicle is and the desired set point for that vehicle. If I run this model, you'll see that this little console pops up. While the simulation's running, it pops up. When it's done, it'll go away again, so I have room. And again, there's that ability to lock it in place. But the graph I'm most interested in here is this set point velocity. You can see in red the set point, the green is the follower. What I'd like to do is I'd like to optimize the model a bit and improve that performance. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go over here to my PID controller. I'm just going to adjust, I'm going to change this TD which, as it says here, is the constant for the time derivative, or the time constant, sorry, for the derivative block in this model. And I'm just going to make it non-dependent of the k parameter. So I'm going to turn that to 2000. So now it's not dependent on k. Now I'm going to go over and launch the optimization app. Now you can see this appears right inside the analysis window. So on the left here, this is where we had our plots appearing. This is where we'd have our viz results if we were, our 3D workspace for construction. And this is where we can down and look at the apps. So I load this model, and now all I'm going to adjust is the gain for that proportional for PK, so PIDK, that gain, and then I think it was TD that I wanted to modify there. And I'm just going to adjust these slightly to give them a little bit more room. By default, it takes 20% of the nominal plus and minus. To create an objective function, I'm going to select the probe error that I had set. I'm going to say that give it a weighting of 1 in my objective function, and we're just going to calculate the RMS value. I'd like to minimize the objective. I'd like to use the global optimization toolbox. You can put a time limit on how long. Of course, this is a global optimizer, so it can take a long time to run for different models. I'm going to limit it to 10 seconds and ask the simulation to start running. Now you can see what it's doing right now while it's waiting is it's generating an optimized compiled procedure that it can just then run over and over and over again, modifying those two parameters as directed by the global optimization solver. And you can see sort of how many simulations it's run there in the corner. Once I'm done, this is the new level for the error. We can also take a look at sort of what that forward velocity profile looks like. And you can see the values that it's given. I'm just going to say that those are the values are fine. I'm going to update the parameters in my MapleSim model. And now if I go back and select that parameter, you can see those are the values that it sort of tracked in that optimization. If I run this again, you'll be able to see the results, hopefully, of the improvement there to the simulation results. And you can see how that tightened the line in, and now it's performing a little bit better as it approaches that set point, and there's less error over the course of the simulation. So that's just a really simple example to show you how you can start to take advantage of these applications, I hope, much faster inside of MapleSim. I should say these apps aren't doing anything magic. They're just using the API provided by MapleSim that allows you to interact with MapleSim models from Maple, but they do it in a concise way. You can build these apps. These apps can be deployed over the web with some small changes. So this is a way that we feel that the power of Maple becomes a little bit more accessible to MapleSim users. Now, one thing I did want to go back to, I think I've touched on most of the interface pieces that I wanted to show. I want to go back to this contact model. We think it's a fun one, but it shows you how quickly you can create, or how you can quickly create, some nice contact models. This has got some sphere inside of a sphere plane contacts. And when it comes up, I think it'll be of a little robot that you might recognize. Should point out, I talked about context menus previously. You can see along the top here, we've added a bunch of them. Things like grouping subsystems and those pieces. You used to have to find them in right-click menus or menus at the top. That's no longer the case. So I'm going to grab this, focus in, and I think you might recognize this little guy from some popular movies that are out right now. And there he goes, MapleSim's own version of BB-8, wandering around, and you can see he's got the motions on the inside are sphere inside contacts, and then there's the contacts rolling on the plane as well. So I hope that gives you an idea of some of the things that we've changed in MapleSim 2016.1, as well as just a highlight of some of the new apps and libraries that are in here.